Welcome to Beauty and the Biz. Discover how to grow your practice with effective cosmetic patient attraction, conversion, and retention advice from author, speaker, trainer, and cosmetic practice business and marketing coach, Catherine Maley, MBA.
Hello, and welcome to my first podcast called Beauty and the Biz. I'm so excited to have you here. Beauty and the Biz is a new resource for cosmetic practices who want to understand the cosmetic and the business side of running a cosmetic practice, because there's nothing easy about it in today's crazy competitive world. You really need to understand not just the skill set that you need to be a cosmetic surgeon or a master injector, but also you have to learn how to lead your team, how to market yourself, how to brand yourself as the best choice, and it goes on and on. So that's why I'm here. I'm here to help you steer through these murky waters. So I am your host, Catherine Maley. I am author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying. And by the way, I'm going to just start with that. When I got into this industry many, many years ago, actually from year 2000, I needed to get some credibility for myself and become an expert in this field. And one way to not only have others think of you as the expert, but have you think of you as the expert, one way to do that is to write a book on a matter that you're really passionate about. And I was super passionate about plastic surgery because I loved the concept of it, and I knew I was going to be interested in it as I got older. So what happened was I interviewed a whole bunch of patients all over the nation, and I asked them quite a few questions, and then I compiled their answers and their feedback into this book, and that really helped set me apart from all the other consultants out there. I didn't just say I was a consultant. Well, actually I did. I just declared myself as a cosmetic patient consultant. As a plastic surgery consultant, but what happened was I actually got a really good in-depth knowledge of why the patient chooses you over somebody else and what you can do to make that happen. So someday I'm going to do a podcast on how I wrote the book, but suffice it to say there's an easier way and there's a harder way. And of course I did it the hard way, but now I can tell you how to do it the easier way. But a book really does put you on the map. It makes you an expert, and you now add author to your list of skills and expertise. And it really was a game changer for me. That book has been worth just, hundreds of thousands of dollars to me in credibility, in reputation, and also the media loved it. I was interviewed several times by ABC News, the New York Times, quite a few magazines. And so anyway, I highly recommend a book. If you haven't already, let me know and I can help you with that. So in the meantime, I'm also a consultant. I also speak all over the world. I'm a pretty big marketer and a trainer for cosmetic practices, and I have been since year 2000. So the speaking around the world has really become a fun part of my job. I've been invited to speak in Milan, Madrid, the UK, New Zealand, Australia. Just recently, I got back from Saudi Arabia, and that was a trip. I was so excited to go there because, number one, it took me about 2 months to get permission to go there. Do you know that is such a closed-knit society that you have to go through a lot of paperwork and a lot of red tape to even get permission on your passport to enter that country? It is amazing. But once you get in, it's fantastic. They were terrific. They were very generous. I flew business class over to Saudi Arabia. It was from San Francisco to Saudi Arabia. It was a super long flight, but it was heaven. I could have stayed on that plane forever. It was lovely. I slept and worked and watched movies. It was fantastic. And here's the good part. When I got off the plane, I don't know what kind of VIP access I had, but I was told to go straight down the stairs. They drop you off at the tarmac, and right down the stairs, I got to go to the right where my Mercedes was waiting with my driver, and everyone else had to go to the left. So of course I felt like the Queen of Sheba. And then I got to go to a private customs gate where I was the only traveler. And I had my bag go through the customs or the whatever it's called, that TSA thing. And there were just a whole bunch of men standing around in, the white robes and the headdress. And it was trippy. I mean, I really felt I was in a movie. And then I was escorted out to another beautiful new Mercedes, to a young girl who actually spoke some English. And she was explaining to me, the culture and all of that. And I did ask her, how popular is plastic surgery and cosmetic rejuvenation in your country? And she said, oh boy, it's really, really, really popular. Underneath I think they're called hijabis or hijabs. Underneath the black robes, there's a lot of breast aug, lipo. They really love big lips, facial rejuvenation. I mean, they're like everybody else. Beauty knows no bounds is really basically what she was saying. And I even went to, I was speaking there, and then I was asked to attend somebody's cosmetic practice to help them a little bit on so I give them a little consulting. And it was so interesting. I entered his practice, and on the right side was a room of many black burqas. It was full on burqas. And these women, most of them are, head to toe covered. Some of them aren't. Some of the newer, the newer generation, or just some of them aren't, but everyone's wearing a black burqa. And then on the left side were all the men in their white robes with their headdress. And I asked the doctor, so why is everybody here? And he said the women, as I said, they really like all of what we like. And then the men really liked hair. They wanted hair transplantation. So isn't that interesting? Anyway, back to what I'm doing. So I'm just going to give you a quick story of how I got here, because like everything, it's always a very long journey. So I was born in Chicago, and in the Chicago South suburbs. And it was a very white neighborhood. Let me put it that way. You were either Irish, Italian, or Polish, period. And it was a blue class, working class kind of place. And I have to tell you, it was not fun for me. I didn't like it. It wasn't my style. I was born into the cliche Irish Catholic family. We had 7 kids. An Irish father who drank way too much and was really mean when he did. It was loud and chaotic and violent at times. And frankly, I couldn't wait to get out of there. I just knew early on, I was here on this earth for something else other than Chicago. I just didn't like it. I was taught that I was supposed to get married and have 7 of my own kids. And that wasn't going to happen. As a matter of fact, I never have been married or have I had kids. And I'm pretty sure it's because I'm still, recuperating from my childhood that was really tough. So it just wasn't my style. So I knew I was going to leave there one way or the other. But here's what I did take from Chicago. I love the Midwest mentality when it comes to good old work ethic. I love it. I have it. I'm grateful for it. My father, as much as he partied, he was the first one up and out in the morning. So one thing I learned was you can play hard, but you're going to work hard as well. And I like that. And people were in Chicago, or the Midwest, I'll say, people are pretty right on. Like, they usually say what they mean and mean what they say. Typically if you say you're going to be somewhere at 8:00, we're there at 8:00. And I know when I first moved to San Francisco, 8:00 meant 9:00, or when I feel like it. I was just surprised at how wishy-washy California was to people. Anyway, and now I'm probably that as well. So when I was in Chicago, in the suburbs, the only thing that you could do to aspire to in my world was to work downtown. That was a super big deal. So I did get a job downtown as a receptionist in a very high-end engineering consulting firm. It was a really big deal consulting firm. And frankly, I think I got the job because, number one, I'm pretty perky and I have a big friendly voice. And I'm very tall and I have big red hair. And in that organization, all of the partners were on the 31st floor. So I was the receptionist on the 31st floor, and we sat in, it was pretty dark. It just had a light over my head, like showing off my hair. And then it had like mahogany wood all over. So it was really dark and quiet. And I really learned like image, how important image was in answering the phone. So that was my taste, my first taste in, like business. And working downtown was fun, although when you're in the suburbs, you have to take a bus. Like first you have to drive to the train station, wait on the, what do you call it? The platform for the train, in Chicago weather, which is horrendous. And then you take a train down there, then you get there and you still have to walk another 5 to 6 blocks. So there's nothing easy about that. But at that time, I was so excited to just get out of the suburbs and get downtown that I was fine with that. But then I met somebody who got me into the Illinois State Medical Society, and I didn't know anything about it, but for some reason they let me be a staff coordinator for the specialties. Like I was like the staff coordinator for internists and internists, psychiatrists, and that was interesting. I got to learn a lot more about doctors. I had never hung around with doctors before, and I have to tell you, in those days, and I know I'm dating myself, but a long time ago, the doctors were smoking, eating steak, drinking like fish. I was really surprised, but that was also Chicago. It wasn't exactly the healthiest place on the planet. And frankly, I was doing the same thing, just what everyone else was doing in my world. They were drinking, smoking, drinking coffee, never exercising. It was not a healthy lifestyle, but it was fun. Then it was itching to get out of there. I just knew I was destined for San Francisco. Somehow in my head, I wanted to live in San Francisco. So I did have a boyfriend at the time. He and I came out to San Francisco. I think I landed and I said, that's it. I'm done. I love it. I'm going to be back here as soon as I can get here. And I had never been so sure of something in my life. And that's another life lesson I learned. When you really feel something strongly, your gut will tell you. And I knew I was going to be back. And long story short, I actually ended up back there within 2 months. I did move there with my boyfriend. That didn't work out really well. Well, it did. Like we were together maybe 5 years and then we parted ways. But when I was going to move out there, I told people, I told my family and friends and the people that worked at the Illinois State Medical Society, I got such grief. Chicago suburbs, the mentality, they called it the nuts and fruits place, San Francisco. They just poo-pooed it so bad, and they were making me doubt my decision and saying, you're going to starve out there. What can you possibly do out there? You don't know anybody out there. It's all weirdos out there. And I just remember thinking to myself, I got to go. It's something I want to do. Even if I'm wrong, it's got to be better than what I know here. So I went for it. And of course, San Francisco ended up being a game changer for me. Honestly, I think by, month in, I quit smoking. I used to smoke. I can't believe it now, but I quit smoking. I started jogging. I joined a health club. I lost 35 pounds that I never saw again. I'm embarrassed to look at old photos. Living in the Chicago suburbs, I didn't even realize I was chubby until I wasn't. And then I ended up going to night school for many years because now I knew I had to catch up. I never went away to college. So I had to finish my BS in marketing at night, and I didn't have a silver spoon. I had to pay all this on my own. But then I ended up getting a BS in marketing, and actually the California Medical Association paid for it because my executive director from the Illinois State Medical Society called the executive director at the California Medical Association and said, I have a staff person who's moving out there. Do you have a place for her? And I really appreciate that they did that for me. So I ran the House of Delegates for the California Medical Association, and that was really interesting. I got to learn what was happening in the medical world and with insurance and just the frustrations and the challenges of being a physician. And so I was very glad that I got that background and that foundation for working with doctors, although I had no idea I was going to be working with doctors later in life, but it was a really good foundation that I didn't know about until later. And then what happened was I was kind of sick of the nonprofit world. I'm definitely materialistic. I like living nicely. I like flying first class, and I didn't appreciate this nonprofit world. No matter how hard you worked, and you're working all the time, you're making no money. And that wasn't fun. And living in San Francisco, you need money to live there. So I was really ready to have a job that I was allowed to make as much as I wanted. So I got into sales. I always wanted to be into sales. My father was a salesman from the steel mill days. And it is something I did get from him, that people skills and sales skills. I was really interested in it. So I studied it. I interviewed. Nobody would give me a sales job. It was so funny. I was so serious. I was 23, 24 years old. I went on so many interviews and nobody would give me a sales job because I didn't have any sales experience. But I was so enthusiastic. Somebody finally gave me a job, and it was shipping services for Burlington Northern Air Freight. And can you imagine? This is probably in the late 70s or 80s. And I am literally going in my suit. I would wear my suit with my bow-tied shirt, and I was very serious. And I would go to shipping docks and talk to them about their big freight, and my company could ship their freight for them. And I just loved it. I loved the freedom. I loved my car. I loved commissions. It was really my place. Now, of course, I don't think I was supposed to be selling shipping services, but I really enjoyed sales and being on my own and having the freedom to make the money I wanted. And by the way, I got really good at it. I won quite a few of the contests, and I really enjoyed it. So that was that, and I did it for quite a while. For the shipping services, I probably only worked there a couple of years. But then I got a friend of mine said, I can hook you up with Pitney Bowes. And Pitney Bowes is a huge Fortune 500 company. And in those days, they were selling a lot of mail machines. Every office had a Pitney Bowes. And I ended up working for Pitney Bowes for 12 years. And again, I love sales. I cold called for 12 years. It was tough. In those days, you would just have a building downtown, and you will go floor to floor and knock on doors. And oh boy, you really learn people skills when you're doing that. It's that can be brutal. But I was very good at it. I was always the top 10% in the company, and we had, I think, 3,000 salespeople. And I would win the trips, and I loved it. I really enjoyed sales because it made me do things I was uncomfortable doing. Trust me, I don't know anybody who gets comfortable cold calling. But boy, it really gets it makes you work on your head, and really keep your moods in check, keep your motivation up. And I enjoyed it tremendously. And then now it's like the late 90s, and eStamp was a SiliconValley.com company that recruited me because they were doing electronic postage, and I was working for Pitney Bowes, which was hard, like old school postage. And they recruited me. And, frankly, in those days, the Silicon Valley was so exciting. It was just happening. Things were so exciting down there, and people were making a fortune. They were, of course, like everyone else, I was a paper millionaire for a while until it all fell apart. But boy, it was such an exciting time. I didn't want to miss the Silicon Valley and the .com thing. I didn't want to miss it. So I went to eStamp. I became their national sales manager. And that's the funny part. You could pretty much just decide who you're going to be. And I could travel anywhere I wanted in the United States. I could try to sell to anybody I wanted. I actually put together a sales team and developed a new product because I told them, I don't think mail's enough. I think we have to do a shipping product. So we actually came up with software where you could just ship a package anywhere. With any carrier. And it was really cool. We called it Digital Shipper. But as the .com world was coming to an end, so was the money. All the funding was going away. And the company I worked for, we were down to 30 million left of our money. And we had hundreds of staff. And the CEO, you could tell at the meetings, he didn't know he knew the writing was on the wall, and I still didn't know it yet. And I remember at the meetings thinking, this is ridiculous. We're just meeting. We should be out doing something. We're hurting here. We've got to do something. And I wanted to put up banners, execute. And instead, I was just so frustrated because I was the only one who didn't realize the ship was sinking. I thought we could fix it because that's how I am. I'm pretty optimistic. And instead, they said, no, you just, just play this out as long as you can because it's coming to an end. And I thought, I'm not playing it that way. I was just so frustrated. I just said, forget it. I'm out. And I quit. And frankly, it was time. That commute was awful, going from San Francisco to Silicon Valley. And it was time for me to just go out on my own because by then I really got the entrepreneurial bug because I watched these .coms and you could just create anything you wanted and from thin air. And I really liked that. I thought, this is so great. I could do that. famous last words, I can do that. So I actually decided I'm just going to be a consultant and sales consultant and a sales and marketing consultant. So in San Francisco, there were still some .coms, and I went to work for some of them. But at that point, that money, that was called easy money, and that was going away. So, but it was really interesting. So I did that. And in the meantime, now I'm in my 40s. I've turned 40. I'm getting older, and I need Botox and fillers because I was early on that bandwagon. I love the idea of Botox and fillers and lasers to keep aging at bay. So my dermatologist happened to be Kathy Fields, who was one part of Fields and Rodin, which are the Stanford dermatologists who created the proactive acne system. And by the way, they ended up working with Gunther Renker, and it was, I think, the fourth most profitable infomercial in history. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of them, Kathy, or now it's called, I don't know what they call it anymore. It used to be called Proactive, but Kathy and Kathy Fields and Katie Rodin, I think they're out of that now. And it's just, I don't know, but it was really interesting watching them. They were so entrepreneurial, and they really gave me the bug. They said, why don't you get into this industry, the cosmetic arena? And I thought, what a great idea, because at the time, when I was visiting Kathy for my Botox, she would make me wait for an hour. Her waiting room was awful. It was real. It was very underwhelming. The customer service wasn't great. The staff wasn't great. And I started thinking to myself, as I went to a couple other places, thinking, boy, these people sure could use help with customer service and how to make a customer feel comfortable. Because I think most surgeons and dermatologists at that point were just insurance-based. They weren't, they were reconstructive. They were not cash. They weren't catering to the credit card patient versus the insurance card patient. So that's where my niche was. I said, oh my God, I'm going to be a sales and marketing consultant to the cosmetic industry. So I'm going to be the expert on the cash paying patient. And I haven't turned back since. So that was a good move on my part. Now, of course, everybody's doing what I'm doing. But at the time, there weren't many people like me out there. So fast forward to today. Now I've been in this industry since year 2000. And I've just worked with practices all over the world. And, everything from the guy who's just starting out, who just graduated, not just graduated, who's done with his fellowship and now what, all the way to, somebody getting ready to exit their practice and they're trying to figure out how to turn it into a sellable asset, and then everybody in between. So there's one thing I've learned, there's no one way to do this. I love the fundamentals, and I know the foundation of a cosmetic practice, and it's very easy for me to look at a practice and see where the gaps are, but it really gets down to it if you've got to have the bread and butter fundamentals down, and then you can do all the fancy stuff, because every practice, every business has the same fundamentals that they have to get good at. Same thing in sports. You know how they always say, like John Wooden, I don't know, who was he, the captain of whatever he was, the basketball team, they would make, the really good coaches make the players do the same thing over and over and over, and it's always the fundamentals. Well, it's the same thing in business, and that's another thing I want to say. This business is no different than any other business. You have customers, you offer a service, you have to market that, and you have to, retain those clients and customers so they come back again and again and refer. It's just like that for every business. So that is my goal when I go into a practice. I'm trying to find where are they wasting money and where are the gaps that are costing them money. So that's pretty much what I do. So why did I start this podcast? Well, number one, because here's the reality. You can no longer just be good at surgery or very good at injectables. That's not enough. You can be skilled and experienced, but that's what's expected of you. It's not enough anymore. Like, good marketers can crush you. That's what's nerve-wracking about this. A good marketer, at least in the short run, can beat a great skilled surgeon or injector. And at least in the short run. Later on, it might catch up to them. But for right now, you could lose a lot to somebody like that if you're not playing the game the way you could be, because it really is a different game now. So I would say for this first episode, my takeaway is to be successful, you've got to be able to adapt to change, and you've got to stay nimble in this marketplace and in your thinking, because everything has changed. The attitude about cosmetic rejuvenation has changed. The patient's preferences have changed. The marketing channels have changed. So you can never rest on your laurels anymore. There are just too many others behind you ready to take your place and take your patients. So you'll just get left in the dust if you don't change along with it. So you know what? Honestly, I want to be your coach. I want to help you through these murky waters and help you keep up with the times so you don't get left behind. That's really what my goal is here for this podcast. So I'm going to be sharing my insights with you on the business side and the marketing side. I'm also hopefully going to motivate and inspire you. I'm also going to have other top docs on here to interview, maybe some people from the industry as well, just to help keep you up on what's happening and where things are heading. So I'd love for you to subscribe to Beauty and the Biz at iTunes. I'd love for you to tell your colleagues, and then please interact with me. If you've got questions, please ask me. If you want to DM me, please do, because this podcast is for you. So enjoy it, and we'll talk soon.
We hope you found valuable insight on this episode of Beauty and the Biz. For more episodes, tools, and Catherine's free book, visit www.catherinemaley.com. That's www.catherinemaley.com. And be sure to subscribe to get the latest practice building strategies delivered to you. And don't forget to share this Beauty and the Biz podcast with your staff and colleagues.